is the biggest house I've ever seen.
It's the Palace of Versailles, home of Marie Antoinette. You know, she was mostly famous for one thing.
Cake! I love cake so much.
Marie Antoinette sure likes cake, Mr. Peabody.
Indeed she does. Marie was a woman with a prodigious appetite for all things covered with frosting. But her expensive tastes made her the target of much criticism.
Why?
Because, Sherman, during Marie's reign, the common people of France were exceedingly poor.
Got any bread?
No! I'm exceedingly poor.
Now can we have some cake?
Mais oui.
Oh, yeah, sorry. May we have some cake?
Mais oui.
Maybe she can't hear me through the hair.
Sherman, what the Queen means is...
Let them eat cake.
And when the Queen heard the poor of Paris could not even buy bread, she said, "Let them eat cake."
No!
Oui, I heard it myself.
It's a scandal!
It's an outrage!
Down with the Queen!
Down with the monarchy.
Wait! What kind of cake?
Vive la Révolution! Vive la Révolution!
Smashing party, Your Majesty. But now I'm afraid Sherman and I must be... Sherman? Sherman? Sherman! Sherman? Sherman! Dear Sherman!
Hey, Mr. Peabody.
What are you doing in here?
Trying these other cakes. There's one in here with whipped cream and strawberries that's pretty fantastic.
Sherman, don't you remember why I told you to stay close to me during the French Revolution?
Because after the French Revolution, it was gonna rain.
Close. I said after the French Revolution comes the Reign of Terror!
Round up the aristocrats!
The Queen and her aristocratic cronies must pay the price for their gluttony. We will slaughter them like the dogs they are, starting with this one.
Mr. Peabody! What should I do?
Nothing, Sherman. Just stay right there.
But Mr. Peabody!
Everything's going to be fine, Sherman. Just stay right there.
Off with his head!
Mr. Peabody!
A cantaloupe? The lowest of the fruits. Who dares to insult me with this melon? Get that dog!
Mr. Peabody, how'd you escape?
It's simple, Sherman. I noticed the distance between the sewer lids, reasoned that there must be one directly under the guillotine platform, noted the loose board under the basket, computed the angle at which the setting sun would bounce off your glasses, momentarily blinding the executioner, and chose that moment to swipe the executioner's melon, giving me the added weight to tip the boards, facilitating my exit.
That's amazing.
It's not amazing. It was just a matter of keeping my head.
Huh, keeping your head up. I don't get it.
There he is! After them!
Come, Sherman, quick!
Oh, this water tastes terrible.
Interestingly, that's not water.
I've got you now.
Indeed you have, Monsieur Robespierre. And what a master of the chase you are.
Oh, you noticed?
Of course, doubling back on me like that, that was genius.
Thank you.
I just hope you don't take my little Confederate here. I depend on him so completely.
Get over here, you.
Drats, you're devilishly clever.
I know, and much quicker than you as well.
But are you quick enough for this?
See? Quick!
Quick, yes, but not too smart.
Oh! Another cantaloupe! You're so...
All right, Sherman. Looks like it's time for a little pop quiz in the art of fencing. Go!
Attack! Parry! Thrust! Repeat!
No.
Remise!
Avoid! I never miss. Come on! Do you smell that, Sherman?
It wasn't me, Mr. Peabody.
I know it wasn't you. It's the methane gas in his sewer system. And given the fact that it ignites at 306 degrees Fahrenheit, we're about to use it to blast out of here! Hang on! Nice landing, eh, Sherman?
So, I love Mr. Peabody and Sherman, so I like that they cover the French Revolution here. So,
Whoa.
obviously we know things are not great. You know, during Robespierre's reign of terror, no one is safe. I mean, absolutely no one is safe. Members of his own party, his own government, the National Convention, they know that they're not safe. And honestly, the people of France are exhausted after this year. You know, they got wars going on. Everyone's living in fear. Like, you know, anything could get you executed for any reason. And now what's interesting is, you know, some people go through some very interesting things to like save their lives during this time. So if you've ever heard of Madame Tussauds Wax Museum, Madame Tussaud was a person alive during the French Revolution, and she had actually been a member of the royal court. Well, she basically starts to make like death masks of like high profile people that are killed during the reign of terror, and it basically spares her life. So what happens is she, you know, kind of takes a capitalist approach to this, and she ultimately ends up, you know, preserving parts of the revolution through this, and then eventually, you know, it turns into what we know it to be today, her wax museums around the world. But her story is really interesting if you guys get a chance to look at it. She definitely gets very creative to save her life, because otherwise she probably wouldn't have made it through the French Revolution being a member of the court. So with everyone being on edge, tired of what's going on, no one trusts Robespierre because he's executing literally everyone. You start to see his own government turn on him. And what's going to happen is on the evening of July 27th, 1794, is members of the National Convention basically hold a secret meeting. And at this secret meeting, they decide whatever they talk about that night has to be carried out that night. Otherwise, their plans and their discussion will ultimately leak out and get to Robespierre, and they don't want that to happen. So they make the decision that night from beginning to end to get rid of Robespierre and how they're going to do it. So, and this kind of turns into like a little bit of a coup, which you guys, if you watch the video I posted for extra credit, you'll see that. What basically happens is Robespierre ends up being essentially kind of like cornered with some other of his buddies, and eventually the National Convention chooses to send soldiers to go arrest him. And he knows what's going to happen, and as do his friends that are with him, and ultimately his friends end up killing themselves before they're able to be arrested. We don't know exactly what happens for sure. We kind of have an idea. We don't know if Robespierre had tried to shoot himself and kind of like missed and like hit his jaw, kind of broke his jaw, or if there was a struggle that happened and then he gets shot during that. Whatever the case is, we know that he ends up being shot through the jaw, and basically like, and this gets really graphic, they end up like, it detaches his jaw from his face. So what these soldiers do, because he's alive, is they end up basically wrapping his head up and arresting him And then they do to him what he had done to thousands upon thousands of other people. They basically make him sit in misery all night. And then in the morning, they get him up. They put him on trial for treason. And he's found guilty. They then, just like everyone else that went through this, they prepare him. They shave his head. And they obviously kind of keep that bandage there to hold his jaw in place. And then they put him in the back of a cart, parade him through the streets of Paris so people can like yell at him and throw things at him and you know, just terrorize him. And then they get him to the guillotine platform. And when they do this, most people, well, everyone else who was executed on the guillotine laid on their belly with their face down when they were executed. Because of, you know, what Robespierre had done to the people of France, they make the decision to actually lay him face up. So he's actually facing up, and he can see the blade come down on him. So when he's executed, you know, he's executed facing upwards, so he sees the blade. His head is kind of like thrown out into the crowd afterwards. His jaw ends up being like kind of torn off of his face. It's bad, nasty stuff. And then he ends up being thrown into a mass grave with all of these other people who had been executed on the guillotine. So he ultimately ends up, you know, reaching the same fate as all of these other people that he had targeted in that 1 year. But this event here really highlights just how derailed this revolution got. The National Convention and the government in place basically says, you know what, we weren't able to protect ourselves from this dictator when we were trying to create a republic. So we basically need to start over. And they make the decision to throw out the old constitution. They draft the third constitution of this revolution, okay? And with this constitution, they're trying to correct the wrongs of the past. Food prices are still outrageous. People are still in poverty. People still don't have rights. Obviously, through the Reign of Terror, you know, 85% of those people that died were from the Third Estate. It's just crazy. So they want to try to bring some stability to France. This new constitution changes up the government. They don't go back to a monarchy. But what they do is they give power to the upper middle class. So like a lot of those bourgeoisie people that we would have seen before the revolution, they create a two-house legislature, just like our Congress. Okay, so like kind of like a House of Representatives and a Senate. They kind of do that. But then they also create something known as the Directory. And rather than having a king or a president, they make the decision to have 5 presidents, basically. The Directory is a group of 5 men who are elected to run the country. And the idea here was if you have 5 men doing it, you will not allow like one person to dominate and control and whatever. This ends up being a disaster as well. They do bring some stability, but we end up finding out that the 5 men who serve on the Directory are incredibly corrupt. They pass laws that only benefit themselves or their friends. They take bribes. And we're back to a situation just like 1789 where the people are struggling. It's a disaster and it's not going to work. So the one thing that we give the Directory credit for is allowing a person in the military to rise up in the ranks. And it's going to be the Directory that makes the decision to give Napoleon Bonaparte a promotion that will ultimately catapult him to what he becomes. So it's the Directory that does that. And that's our whole next lesson, is the story of Napoleon and what goes on with him.